Testing. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Number 9. Hello, YouTube. How is it going on this fine Saturday afternoon? Hey, Mountaintop Fish, welcome to the stream, man. Is the audio okay? Hey, Justin Shepherd, welcome to the stream. Are you guys getting my audio all right? Insightful One Fish Keeping, welcome to the stream. Hey, Daryl Dimer, welcome to the stream, man. A little quiet. I'm not sure, that may just be my voice. I'm a little bit hoarse, so maybe that's what that is. Hey, Laura, welcome to the stream. Once again, guys, I have no real axe to grind today. My little pleco that I posted on is doing fine. He seems to be hanging in there. I don't know how long he's going to last, breathing that hard and being that starved-gutted looking, but he's still hanging in there. So as long as he's willing to hang in there, I'm gonna try my best to keep him going. Michael's stream a day ago, he had the King and Queen of Cichlids on, and Scott, the King of Cichlids, said that he always tries to add salt to a tank when fish are having trouble breathing. And while I haven't actually outwardly added salt to his tank, I have some zeolite that I had in a gallon jug. The way you recharge zeolite after it's absorbed as much ammonia and nitrate as it can is to put it in salt water and leave it sit for a while. And when you do that, then you can rinse the salt off and you have fresh zeolite again. And zeolite is a product that, I mean, basically it's cat litter is what it boils down to, but it's a little different from cat litter. It's what they used to use for cat litter a long time ago. It's highly absorbent, and it will absorb ammonia and nitrite and nitrate out of the water. Not a lot, but it absorbs enough to make it worth adding to a tank when you're having trouble. Well, anyway, the way you recharge it, as I said, is to soak it in salt water for a while. And I had a gallon jug of zeolite that had been soaking in salt water since the 90s. I just kept carrying it around with me everywhere it went. And finally, a couple of months ago, I decided, you know, I need to get that out of there. And so I dumped it all out and soaked it in some water to give it a chance to get rid of its salt. And there are 2 big bags of it, 2 half-gallon bags, net bags of it in my sump system. And I know that zeolite is giving off a little bit of salt. The problem with zeolite has always been that once it reaches its limit of absorption, it will then start slowly releasing whatever it's absorbed. So I think that I am giving those fish a slightly salted water column just by the effect of that zeolite having soaked in salt water for all those years, and like like 2 decades it was soaking. So I'm sure it absorbed a lot of salt. And while I put it in net bags and washed it off quite a bit, and then left it in some tap water for a while just to try to release some of the salt. Um, I'm sure that there's still salt in that stuff, and I kind of thought that that might be a good thing for this tank, because wild caught fish are always going to have problems with their, adjusting to my water slightly harder, even though I used RO water with all the stuff that I have had in my sump, having come from harder water tanks. The TDS creeped up on me and was in the, 50-ish TDS area, and the water they're coming from is between 9 and 27. But like I've said earlier, I know that water that they were in at the base camp was 45 at TDS, the well water that they use at the Go Wild Peru base camp, and also that the water that Corey and Dean are getting out of their tap is in the high 30s, I believe. And so I figured that they would be all right, that they would be able to adjust to that. And that may have added a little bit of stress to that fish, but my inclination is to believe with the slight amount of salt that's in that water too, that those things are probably equaling out. That's probably what some of the TDS that I'm reading is salt in the tank, in the water. And I also added a big manzanita log, a bunch of rocks, several of which had algae on them from other tanks, and those other tanks also had higher TDS in them. So I'm sure that there is some giving off of that higher calcium content from some of that stuff that I've added in the tanks. Now the wood, hey Sergeant Tank, welcome to the stream, man. How's Jeremy doing? Jeremy flexing his muscle there. Probably a misclick. That's fine, Jeremy. I understand how it is. I've done it several times. It's very easy to misclick mountaintop fish if you're trying to do something and you misclick on someone's name. The chat moves and moves up while you're clicking, and you click on someone else's name and hit the wrong button. You can do just exactly like what Jeremy just did. The mods need modding, yes. Hey Victor, welcome to the stream, man. I'm once again on no axe to grind today. I just really don't have a particular topic. I was hoping some of you guys might have questions. I'm not taking your wrench away, Jeremy. I know you better than that. Abusive mods don't apologize. Abusive mods just do what they're going to do and then go on. Like I said, I was hoping some of you guys might have had some questions, but I will continue to ramble on about these new Peru fish that I've gotten into my tanks. The black belt, and I'm not going to say cichlids this time. I keep saying black belt cichlids instead of black belt tetras in my videos, because black belt cichlid is a term that I've used often in the past. There is a black belt cichlid, but black belt tetra doesn't roll off of my tongue naturally, so I keep misstating that. I also keep saying emperor tetra because they look like emperor tetras, kind of, instead of imperial tetras, which is what the name the hobby has given these tetras. They are doing fine. Of all the fish that I got, they're probably the happiest. And that's what makes me realize that that little pleco that's having so much trouble breathing, it's not my water conditions, because the tetras, the nigricinctus black belt tetras, are just as happy as they can be. And the other three plecos, the gold fleck plecos, are just as happy as they can be. They're not breathing hard. They don't seem to be suffering one bit. So I think that the water quality in the tank is okay. I did a water change yesterday just to try to get some of the detritus off the bottom. And because of that heavy flow that I've got, the detritus kind of ends up in a little curled up area where it all kind of gathers. And so I'm able to get in there and take a gallon of water out and get most of the detritus out of the tank. So the tetras, and I do think that I have got 2 tetras in that tank that I don't know what they are. It may be just one, but there are 2, actually there's 3 of the tetras that stay away from the school of black belt tetras. They don't really school with them. Every once in a while they will, but mostly they don't. And they are obviously, well, I say obviously, they appear to be something different than the black belt tetras are. I don't know what. I'm not sure yet. Every once in a while I get a flash of blue off of one of them. So I suppose it's possible that I've got one single blue that somehow got mixed up with the nigricinctus, or Dean added it in from a mixed tank. I'm not sure that it is a blue. Hey Dank Tanks, welcome to the stream, man. In the other tank, a wild Jerome has been spotted. Yeah, they are either subdominant somehow and not showing their black stripe, which is but if you come close to Gatlinburg, so you live near Poison Frog, huh, Mountaintop? I spent many years in Knoxburg, Tennessee, or Knox Patch, as we were wont to call it. I went to the University of Tennessee and lived in Knoxville for 10 or 12 years altogether, I guess. I left and came back once, but I really loved Knoxville. Gatlinburg, not so much. One of my buddies, Joe Mayer, his parents had a cabin up above Gatlinburg. After you go past all the stuff in Gatlinburg, you would turn to the if you were going from the south through Gatlinburg. After you went past all the Dollywood and all that stuff, and the stores and I'm sure it's much grown up by now, you would turn to the left going north and go up to the top of one of those they're not really mountains right there, but they're foothills of the mountains right there just past Gatlinburg. And I stayed in that cabin quite a bit. and it was great. Gatlinburg's, grown up quite a bit, but the cabins still seemed to be way out in the middle of the woods. There was nobody around. Um, I was never a big fan of Pigeon Forge or what we called Poison Frog. I was never really a big fan of Gatlinburg. Uh, if you go to a McDonald's, if you go to a McDonald's outside of Gatlinburg and buy a hamburger, it's going to be at least $1 cheaper than a hamburger at the McDonald's in Gatlinburg, and that always kind of ticked me off. My buddy Joe Mayer and I used to spend whole weekends out in the mountains, the Taines as we called them, and Bluff Mountain used to be one of my favorite places to go. We'd sit dangling our legs off Bluff Mountain and look. We'd chase piney squirrels and wander the mountains. There are some incredible little waterfalls. If you are driving along the road and park off the side of the road where a little creek is, you can walk 2 or 3 miles up into the mountains and the woods, and you can find some incredible waterfalls up there. Rainbow Falls, there were several of them, and we used to we'd either take a whole weekend or we'd take a Saturday or a Sunday, and we'd just go tromping around in the mountains, and it was incredible fun. Always liked Knoxville. It's got a lot of problems with it, mainly the roads and the traffic. It's too crowded for the roads that they have, and it's constrained by the river and the topography in such a way that there are very few ways to go all the way through Knoxville. I was living there and worked on road construction when the Knoxville had the ignominious honor to have 2 major interstates, I-40 and I-75, join together and become one lane for about a mile. And you take all the trucks on I-40 and all the trucks on I-75 and you try to shove them into one lane, and it was called Malfunction Junction, and it would take up to 7 or 8 hours before it would clear sometimes. If 2 of those trucks ran into each other trying to jump in front of each other, or a wreck happened or something happened, it could take many a day coming home from work. I'd spend an extra 4 hours on the interstates around there. So in the 80s, Southeast Bridge Builders and a bunch of other companies got a contract to fix all that. Yeah, I worked on the roads and the bridges, Mountaintop. So I've spent quite a great deal of time in Knoxville, and I always liked it. It's where my father and my brothers and sisters all live. Actually, my mother lives there too now. It's a great town. It's just got some issues of its own. Hey, 54 Punchy, welcome to the stream, man. We're basically talking about nothing. So if you've got some nothing to talk about, how many siblings do I have? I have a stepsister, Jackie, and my sister's name is Elizabeth, and my brother's name is David, and they're all much younger than me. I was 12, I think, when David was born, or 11 or something like that. So they're much younger than me, and I was out of the house by the time I was 15, so we got about 5 or 6 years together, and that was it. 54 Punchy says he's good at nothing. Well, At least knowing that you're good at nothing is a good thing. Yeah, let's just say that my path as a young person was not very in line with the path that my strict father, with him it was my way or the highway, and I chose the highway at every turn. So I was out of the house really young. I got drugged back a couple of times, but it didn't stick. I moved back in while I was going to college, when I started college, but that didn't work either. So I ended up living on my own while I was sharing rent. Um, and I went 3 years to the University of Tennessee, basically broke all the time. All my friends knew I was broke, that every dime I had was going to school or to rent or to food. And so they knew that if they were going to go do something that was going to cost money, it didn't make any sense to come get me because I was going to be broke. So long about my third year, which was in 80, 79, 80, that bridge building started, and they wanted anybody that could swing a hammer because they just needed a bunch of people to get all that construction done, because they were building bridges in 5 or 6 locations all at once, on ramps, overpasses, all that kind of stuff. And I worked one section just outside of town before you hit all the major connections to the east. I can't remember the name of the road my dad lived on. His house was on. The neighborhood he lived in was on, but it was out towards Farragut, but not that far. And I worked right there on 4 different bridges for over a year when all that was being built. And I say bridges, many of them were just on ramps and overpasses. They weren't really long bridges, but even a small overpass is quite a construction feat, especially when there's a road that's being used underneath you, and you have to be careful not to drop anything down and hit somebody passing underneath. So I know Knoxville pretty good, mountaintop fish. Uh, Joel says he'd like to drive around the states aimlessly. It would be a wonderful experience, Joel, but you'd probably get tired of it pretty quick. You can spend 7 days driving from one end of the U.S. to the other. If you started in Florida and went to Alaska, you'd probably take 2 weeks maybe, or a week and a half, without just driving 24/7. You're really better off if you come to the States to pick an area and spend a lot of time in that area, maybe 2 or 3 states that you like or you want to be around. The United States still has some wild areas, but they're very few and far between anymore, and even the wild areas are being affected. 54 Punchy says he's lived in LA and on Cape Cod. I've never lived in Los Angeles. I've lived up north, the East Coast, but I've never lived on the West Coast, the far West Coast. I've been there a bunch of times, but I've never lived there. It looks fun. It looks silly expensive, though. Every time I've gone, I went to Punchy says he worked at Disneyland for 2 years. I've actually worked at Disney World. Joel says he'd probably choose Washington, Colorado, maybe California or Florida. Yeah. Victor says when fixing airplane hangar doors, I would always tie a rope to all my tools. Plane paint jobs are not cheap. Yep. And there's Aquatasy, and welcome to the stream, man. He says he's lived in the San Francisco Bay Area his entire life. And in a lot of ways, I envy you, Aquatasy. Yet, in a lot of ways, I don't. So, I'm not sure that the lifestyle pace in San Francisco is exactly how I want to live my life. Punchy grew up in Oregon. Man, there's some beautiful country in Oregon. Washington, California, Texas, Massachusetts, Montana, Colorado, and now Wyoming. I've been all over the country. Yeah, Aquatasy, I grew up mostly in the South. I was born in Bismarck, North Dakota, but I grew up mostly in the South. My dad was a Air Force, and I was an Air Force brat, so we bounced around a lot in the North when I was too little to really know what was going on. I do remember my mother saying, "Dwain, look up." And I looked up and up and up and up, and we were standing next to the Empire State Building. And we lived in Schenectady, New York, and a lot of places that had to do with my father's work. He went from I keep doing that, don't I, 54? I apologize. 54 Punchy just sounds like a male name to me, and I keep making that same mistake over and over again. My dad was in the Air Force, so we bounced around Air Force bases for quite a while, and then he joined General Electric as a engineer, and so we lived in a lot of the towns where GE had their electrical engineering and factories at. Yeah, Punch is masculinity. Yeah, my dad then went into the space program when the space program really kicked up, and so I got to live most of my younger years in the South, Texas, Florida, Louisiana, Alabama, Mississippi. There were NASA factories and NASA places of operation all across the South, and so I spent most of my upbringing in the South, and I have always loved. There's a lot of terrible things about the South. Victor says he's traveled all 48 connected states. I have not made that. I have not done all 48. I've done probably 38, but I've not made all 48, so that's awesome. His parents owned a trucking company. Yeah, this nation has a lot to offer. But I was going to say that while the South has many, many, many very deep, problematic issues, but there is a pace of life in the South that is so different from the rest of the country. It just, the people aren't quite as driven as people around the rest of the country are, and I got used to that growing up. I got in that that groove, that mode of not being quite as interested in running continuously as most other people are, and that stuck with me. Mountaintop Fish, have a wonderful Saturday, man, and the rest of the weekend. Thanks for stopping by. Yeah, Quadisi, you're right. The people of the South generally are good, decent, warm people. You know, it's cliquish. If you're not in their clique, sometimes it can be problematic dealing with them. And there are places in the South where people don't really like strangers or people that are coming from somewhere else. They fear they fear what they don't know or what's different. But for the most part, the people are wonderful, warm, open-hearted people. Yep, Southern hospitality is a real thing. But I always heard about those California girls too, Aquaticy. So I always thought how wonderful it would be out there for that, if nothing else. I wish they all could be California girls. All right, guys, we've wandered pretty far astream here. Um, After all, this is a fish channel. and yeah, Punchy, you're right. I lived 10 years in Dallas, Plano area, and Texas sucks a lot, especially in the larger towns. I mean, there's lots to do, but okay. Um, Too old to be a girl now, but we are the best. I, I just all the Beach Boys songs and all that kind of stuff just made California girls out to be less interested in playing games than most of the women that I grew up knowing in the rest of the country were. Um, so that always appealed to me, the idea that the women were a little more grounded and a little more mature and a little more knowing of the world than in the rest of the country. Yeah, tornadoes are no fun. Remind me of that sometime, Punchy, and I'll give you my whole tornado spiel. I lived in Arkansas many years too. And Arkansas is like a magnet for tornadoes. There have been so many people that have died in northwest and northern Arkansas, from western Arkansas, from tornadoes. And they're coming out of Oklahoma too, so. All right, I was going to talk about the 30-gallon tank. In the 30-gallon tank are 7 Corydoras that are Joel says, is it mainly flying debris that will get you in a tornado? Joel, the main thing that gets you in a tornado is the fact that there is an atmospheric pressure in your house, and if you have your windows all sealed tightly and your doors all weather stripped and your house tightly sealed, and then a super low pressure drop occurs outside along with a lot of strong winds, your house will literally explode, because all that pressure has to get out somehow. The pressure is going to equalize. So one of the best things you can do in a really bad tornado is to open all the windows, on the opposite side of the house from where the storm is coming from, so that your house can equalize in pressure. Because most of the time, what isn't wind damage? Most of the time, it is low pressure, because when a tornado is very near, it is extreme low pressure. That's what forms a tornado, high pressure and low pressure fronts together. They might overflow some, yeah, but not really. I don't think that the amount of pressure in water is enough. Yeah, I was actually watching that World Series, Quadacy. But anyway, high wind damage, 200-mile-an-hour wind is going to strip roofs and, blow stuff everywhere. And the tornado itself can literally pick cars up and throw them around. But to my mind, the thing that is the most dangerous is the extreme pressure difference between what's in your house and what's outside when the tornado arrives. Yeah, I think that a fish tank would have a lot better chance surviving a tornado than an earthquake. Earthquakes would really wreak havoc with fish keeping. So, in this 30-gallon long, I have 7 Corydoras that Michael Barber called CW109s. And they are doing fine. They spend a lot of their time going up and down the sides of the tanks, which I know that some quarries actually do that. Hatatas quarries are mid-water quarries. So I know that there are some quarries that do that a lot. But I think they're still trying to adjust to the TDS in the tank. And as much air as I've got in there, it may not be quite enough for them, so they may be going, quarries will go to the surface and breathe surface air to adjust oxygen levels, and will also they can also adjust themselves to the TDS in the water and their body's osmotic process. Gulping air will sometimes let them help adjust themselves to that. So they are doing fine. They're having a little trouble getting enough to eat. One, because I'm underfeeding them. I really don't want to go overboard in a 30-gallon tank with 2 cichlids and 7 little cories in it. I think it's well understocked, because the cichlids won't make 4 inches fully grown. But it's still, I'm still skittish enough about that size of a tank that I don't want to go too overboard. I try to, literally what I've been doing is taking a frozen food cube of brine shrimp and a frozen food cube of bloodworms, and sticking them in front of the wave maker on my 110 tank, and letting them melt until I've just got a little bit left in my hand, and then I drop that in with the Bujerkainas. And I don't know which specific species of Bujerkaina they are, but I'm working on it. I'm hoping for them to reach the point where they're really starting to show me natural, normal colors. so that I can get a really good, clear photograph of exactly what they look like. They move so much; they're hard for me to get a really clear photograph. And you guys are still talking about earthquakes, and yes, that San Francisco quake was terrible. San Francisco's had a lot of serious disasters that have hit it. You know, it's a huge place, and and LA's had its share too. Um, anyway, I I'm very interested in figuring out exactly which species these Boo, Her, K, Ina are, but it's difficult because there's very few pictures. If you look them up and look for pictures, you'll there's probably 10 species, and there's probably like 3 species from the area um, where we were, the Puerto Maldonado, the Madre de Dios area. Um, so it's hard to get a good, clear picture of what these guys actually are. Um, Michael Barber sent a picture to Hans George Evers, and he said that it's a new species of acara, and I'm calling them Burherkaina because that is the category that Sven Kullander set up for them. They are not true acaras, but they are actually mouth brooder acaras. They will Their breeding habit is to get a small rock or a small leaf and lay a plaque of eggs on it, and then they drag that plaque of eggs around. Like if there's low water or if there's a predator, they will grab that plaque of eggs and run with it and get away from the predator. So their eggs aren't locked in someplace where a predator can just come and eat them. They will actually keep them away from a predator or keep them in proper water. You know, if the water's drying up or if it rains real hard or something, they actually move that plaque of eggs around to where the eggs are safe. And then they are partial mouth brooders. They will suck when the eggs are ready to hatch. They will take them into their mouth. Both the male and the female do this, and they will take them into their mouth and hold them there until they are free swimming fry, and then release them, spit them back out. Justin, a lot of these people I've known for years, so I mod them. Someone that I know really well, I have modded. People that I've met in person, I've modded. People that I've had a lot of interaction with, I've modded. Um, there are a lot of problems with trolls on YouTube, and usually if you run a stream for very long, it will attract trolls if it's got enough people in it. You get 20 or 30 people in a stream and run it for an hour, you're going to get trolls. And I don't get very many. I guess we've run off the ones that have showed up well enough that I don't get very many. Either that or it means I'm not very famous and trolls don't bother coming here. I'm perfectly happy with being not very famous. In fact, I prefer it because that way we get to have a real interaction with each other, and there's plenty of time to talk, and there's plenty of time for questions. Yeah, I pretty much have a mod wall in here. when they're on. Sometimes very few of my mods are on, and we'll have a stream where it's mostly non-modded people. But most of the people here are regulars, or they're people that I know very well. Like if Corey McElroy were to drop in right now, I would mod him if I haven't already. Or Bob. That's great, Justin. You are more than welcome to ask questions. That's mainly what I like to do, is to answer other people's questions if I can, or to the best of my ability. But if we don't have, yeah, Joel would time him out. Well, IFG pops in here occasionally, and you saw Jeremy pop in. Lucas, I've seen Lucas in here like twice, and I think he was here long enough for me to mod him once. So, people that I know really well, I just mod them. That way, if they're the only one on and with a bunch of new people, then at least there is a mod. Well, Justin, I think that's two people, or at least I think that's one person. Lucas's streams that you very much ought to not miss. I'm not sure I qualify as being the second, but I sure appreciate the comment, the putting me in the same line with Lucas Bretz is quite an honor. And like I say, I'm not sure that I warrant that, but I'll take it. And please ask questions if you have them. There is a great wealth of fish keeping knowledge here. A lot of the oldsters in the fish fam tend to hang out here. Joel's asking me, Dwayne, do you think this is the golden age of fish streaming online and online hobby participation? Joel, I'm of two minds about that. I think that we are on the cusp of the golden age of fish streaming, that there are still Joey's kind of shown us the path of how popular a fish keeping channel can be. So I think that there are lots of people that are up and coming, Dustin, Corey. There are a lot of people that, we kind of tear down, and I'm in the lowest tier, but we kind of tear down as to how popular the channels are. I think with the whole fish fam idea, and the fact that more and more of the old guard of fish keepers are starting. Hey, Sherry Sweeney's Fish Room, welcome to the stream, and thank you for the fine comment. I think that what's going on right now is that the fish streaming on YouTube is getting popular enough and making enough inroads into the hobby that some of the old guard, some of the people like Mel, Gapote Mel, Ted's Fish Room, people that have been around this hobby for 40 years, Gary Lang, people like that are starting to become a part of this. They're starting to be engaged with the fish fam, the whole YouTube idea of expanding the knowledge base of everybody. So I think that there is still another 4 or 5 years of growth as those old guard get folded in and interviewed, and people like Eric Bodrock and all those sorts of people out there that are really highlights in this hobby. Um, the really old guard, the old school fish keepers, they are kind of standoffish about it still because it's still new enough to them to be uncomfortable for them and to be something they want to avoid. But I think in the next 5 to 10 years, that's all going to go by the wayside, and there will be so many people doing so many interviews and so many people from that age of fish keeping that will literally be part and parcel of the fish fam, that it will take a whole nother level. It will go to a whole nother level of knowledge base and skill and people that are really good teachers that actually have a very good methodology for teaching people in all different tiers of fish keeping ability to move forward, to learn ways to get to the next tier of fish keeping, and I think that's when the golden age is going to be. You know, who knows whether we're still going to be on YouTube when that happens? There may be some completely different. Yes, 54, you have reached full geezerdom. My youngest stepson told me that about 5 years ago, that I and his mom had reached full geezerdom, and that kind of brought a smile to my lips. So that's my opinion about what's going to happen with YouTube and whatever media follows YouTube, because another 10 years YouTube probably won't even be around anymore. It'll be some other place that has all of the good things about YouTube and less of the bad things about it. You know, and I don't know exactly what that's going to be, but I have a feeling that this whole fish keeping hobby on video and group hangouts and that sort of thing will just keep spinning upward. It's a great hobby, fish keeping is. It teaches you so much. It teaches you to value life. It teaches you science, just raw, pure science, because to really understand it, to really get a handle on what is actually going on in your fish tanks, you need to actually have a solid grounding in the science of fish tanks, the nitrogen cycles, water qualities, and Sherry says teaches you patience. It's very Zen-like. It's very meditative to sit and really observe your fish closely, to watch their dancing in the tank, to watch their interactions with each other, to watch their behaviors towards the other denizens of your tank. It's very Zen-like. And I've often thought that that judges should be sentencing gang members to keeping a fish alive in a tank for 90 days or for 6 months instead of prison, because prison just makes you worse. And learning to value life, learning to understand how to keep something alive, learning the beauty of the hobby and the beauty of the fish themselves is something that that I think people that are convicted of gang problems should probably be faced with, so that it kind of undoes some of the Yeah, you're right, Joel. It is different than keeping guppies for gangsters. Exactly, Joel. Because sending people to prison is not teaching them to value life. It teaches them less value of life. It teaches them to make sure that you never get caught again. You know, that's basically what you're teaching them. To either kill who's trying to catch you or kill yourself in the process so you don't ever have to go back to prison again. And I just think that's a negative all the way around. And forcing them to try to keep something alive is the exact opposite of that. You know, they may not be able to do it. They may, just kill it the first day and have to go back to jail time. But to me, it just would seem like it would be so much better. Okay, guys. Yeah, that would be pretty wild. But if you, hey, the fish loft, welcome to the stream. I'm getting ready to shut it down here, but welcome to the stream. Um, yeah, Joel, you're right. If hip hop culture picked up aquariums, keeping aquariums as something they loved, then then that would be a big thing. I mean, other than the camaraderie of all the people that are here that are as into fish keeping as I am, um, the reason I am here, the main reason I am here, is to try to help people that have just gone and bought their first tank and don't really have a clue what it is that they're trying to do, so that they can begin to understand what is actually involved in keeping a fish tank, so that they can find tools to use so that they can get better at keeping their fish alive until such point as they can make their fish thrive. And it's a big difference between alive and thriving. You know, that little pleco in my tank is alive, quote, 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 alive. But he is not thriving by any means. And that's not so much my fault as it is the fault of him ending up in a bag with a bunch of other dead plecos for a very long time. Like 3 days in a bag of dead plecos. And that's going to give you high ammonia and really bad gill burn. And that's what he's suffering from. But whatever the reason, there's a big difference between just keeping a fish alive in a tank and actually creating a situation where that fish can thrive and breed and do all the things that fish normally do in a tank. And that's why I'm here. That's the main reason why I'm here, is to try to disseminate enough knowledge about fish keeping so that people can better understand the different little areas of what's going on in their fish tank. Hey, Kevin Hyatt, you're catching the very tail end, man. I'm about to shut it down here in a minute. But thank you for stopping by, man. And, of course, you can catch the replay. All right, guys, we're right at the hour mark. I have starting, instead of starting at 4 o'clock now, I have starting between 3:30 and 3:45 because I'm trying to, I have to check on XSplit every time early so that there's time enough for it to update and add any new program features that they are continuously coming out with. So if I wait till 4 o'clock and turn it on, I end up waiting about 15 or 20 minutes until it all downloads and installs and it's ready to run again. So I have started. I start doing that about 3:30, and if it takes me 5 minutes, then I start. If it takes me 15 minutes, then I start. So that's why I'm coming in a little early every day, and so that's why the stream's over at 3:45 or, I mean 4:45 or thereabouts. All right, guys, have a great rest of the weekend. Thank you so much for spending time here, and I hope we've talked about something that has aided you in some small way. You guys have a great rest of the weekend and enjoy your Memorial Day, and look after your fish.